Jake Morrison stood in front of the glowing screen in the research station. His eyes were fixed on the strange metal ball that floated inside a glass container. The ball was about the size of a basketball and gave off a soft blue light. It looked alive somehow, like it was breathing. "How old is this thing?" Jake asked. He turned to look at Lisa Chen, the scientist in charge of studying ancient alien objects. Lisa's hands were shaking a little as she spoke. "At least 50,000 years old? Maybe even older. The way it breaks down over time doesn't match anything we've ever seen before." The metal ball had been found 3 weeks ago. A mining team discovered it on the planet's surface, buried under 2 kilometers of rock. What made it special wasn't just how old it was. Inside the ball was information, lots of it. The ball contained a complete history of galaxy politics going back thousands and thousands of years. This was from a time before humans even knew how to write. Captain Nicole Patterson walked into the lab. Her face looked serious. "The people in Washington want a full report in 1 hour. They're saying this is the most important discovery in human history." Jake nodded his head. "They're right about that. Lisa, show her what we found in the database." Lisa touched the controls and suddenly the room filled with floating images. There were star maps, alien writing, and what looked like government documents. The ball contains records from something called the Galactic Council. It was a government that ruled over thousands of alien species across the galaxy. "You said was?" Nicole noticed. "Past tense?" "The council fell apart about 12,000 years ago," Lisa explained. "According to these records, it destroyed itself through corruption, fighting over territory, and what we can only call paperwork warfare." Jake pulled up one particular file. "But here's the really interesting part. The council knew about Earth. They'd been watching us for thousands of years, long before we built cities. They had rules in place for when we eventually learned to fly through space." Nicole's eyes went wide. "Are you telling me we were supposed to join this council?" "Not exactly," Lisa said quickly. "The records suggest something more complicated. Earth was marked as a restricted world. No contact, no interference. The question is why?" The floating image changed to show Earth from space, covered in alien writing. Jake had spent days trying to understand it with help from the ball's translation system. "The council classified humanity as a potential threat species," Jake said quietly. "Not because we were violent or dangerous in the normal sense, but because of something they called adaptive volatility. We're unpredictable in ways that scared them." Nicole studied the floating documents. "So they quarantined us?" "More like they delayed dealing with us," Lisa corrected. "The records show there were big arguments in the council about what to do when humanity eventually reached for the stars. Some groups wanted to guide us, others wanted to eliminate us before we became a problem, and still others argued for the quarantine approach that was finally chosen. And then the council fell apart before they could follow through," Jake added. The meaning hung heavy in the air. Humanity had been alone in the galaxy, not by accident, but by political design. And now, with the council long gone, they were entering a galactic stage with no rulebook, no friends, and no idea what other pieces of that ancient civilization might still be out there. "There's more," Lisa said, pulling up another file. "The ball contains coordinates, dozens of them. Locations of other council buildings, archives, and what the records call enforcement stations." Nicole leaned forward. "Enforcement stations?" "Military bases," Jake clarified. "Automated defense platforms designed to maintain the council's quarantine zones and restricted worlds. If they're still working after 12,000 years," he didn't need to finish the sentence. "If humanity started exploring those coordinates without understanding what they were walking into, they could trigger defense systems designed by a civilization far more advanced than anything Earth could currently handle. We need to inform the Galactic Survey Commission," Nicole said, "and we need to do it carefully. This information could cause panic, or it could give us the advantage we need," Jake disagreed. "The Council's archives contain technology plans, diplomatic rules, and historical records of thousands of alien species. If we can understand what happened to them, maybe we can avoid making the same mistakes." Lisa pulled up one final document. Her face looked troubled. "There's something else you both need to see. It's a council order issued about 15,000 years ago, just before their collapse. It's labeled the Human Contingency." The floating image showed a long document filled with alien text. The translation system worked slowly, changing the ancient language into English. Jake read out loud. In the event of council dissolution or catastrophic failure, all species previously designated as restricted are to be re-evaluated for integration or elimination. Priority Alpha is species 7842, designation human, planet Earth, Sol system. Recommendation is immediate containment or eradication. Threat level is existential. The room fell silent. They were afraid of us, Nicole whispered. Even back then, they knew we'd be a problem. Not a problem, Lisa said. Her eyes were bright with determination, a challenge to their established order. The records indicate that every time in galactic history, when a species like humanity emerged, one that didn't fit their neat categories, it forced massive political change. Jake closed the floating image with a hand gesture, so now we have a choice. We can hide this information, pretend we never found it, and hope that whatever automated systems the Council left behind have broken down enough that they won't notice us. Or, Nicole prompted, or we use this knowledge to prepare ourselves for what's out there. We learn from the Council's mistakes. We find their old facilities, study their technology, and make sure that when we do meet other spacefaring species, we're not the naive newcomers they were expecting. Nicole thought about this for a long moment. Can the ball be moved? Yes, Lisa confirmed. We've already begun preparations to transport it to the main research facility on Mars. Good, do it. But keep this information secret. Jake, I want you to put together a team to investigate these coordinates. Start with the ones closest to human space. We need to know what we're dealing with. And if we find active Council installations, Jake asked. Nicole's face hardened. Then we deal with them. The Council made their decision about humanity 15,000 years ago. They don't get to make that choice for us now. As Nicole left the lab to make her report to Earth, Jake and Lisa stood before the ball. Its blue light made strange shadows across their faces. Do you think we're ready for this? Lisa asked quietly. Jake thought about humanity's long history, its wars and its victories, its ability to do both terrible destruction and incredible creation. Ready or not, we're about to find out what it really means to be a spacefaring species. The Council tried to keep us in a box. Let's show the galaxy why that was never going to work. The ball pulsed as if responding to his words. Jake couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere in the vast darkness of space, ancient systems were beginning to wake up, detecting the touch of human minds on secrets that had been buried for thousands of years. The game had changed. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe, and the political games of a fallen galactic empire were about to become very important to Earth's future among the stars. 3 months had passed since they found the strange metal ball. Now the expedition ship Endeavour was pushing through the outer edges of known space. The ship carried 20 specialists toward the first set of Council coordinates. Commander Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, watching the stars streak past as the ship moved faster than light. Approaching target coordinates in 10 minutes, said Lieutenant Sam Rodriguez from his station. Sensors are picking up something big. Really big. Jake walked over to stand beside him. He looked at the data on the screen. How big are we talking? Station-sized. Maybe 20 kilometers across. It's in orbit around a brown dwarf star, completely hidden from normal observation. Sam's fingers moved across the controls. Boss, it's definitely artificial. And according to these power readings, it's still active. Dr. Lisa Chen came onto the bridge. She had spent most of the journey studying the ball's decoded files in the ship's research lab. That matches the description of a Council archive facility. They were designed to run themselves for hundreds of thousands of years. Any sign it knows we're here? Jake asked. Not yet, replied Lieutenant Karen Walsh from the weapons station. But I'm detecting what look like defensive weapons along the outer surface. Nothing's targeting us, but those are definitely weapon platforms. Jake made a decision. Full stop. Hold position at 500,000 kilometers. Sam broadcast the greeting code from the ball's database. Let's see if this thing still recognizes Council authorization codes. The bridge fell silent as Sam sent the ancient signal. It was a complex series of mathematical patterns and encrypted packets that the ball had identified as Universal Council identification markers. For 30 seconds, nothing happened. Then the station came alive. Lights blazed across its surface in patterns that hadn't been seen in 12,000 years. The weapon platforms rotated but didn't point at them. A return signal flooded the ship's communications, so full of information that the computers struggled to process it all. We're being scanned, Karen reported. Her voice was tense. Multiple sensor types, some I don't even recognize. It's mapping every part of our ship. Lisa was already working at another console. Her eyes were wide. The station is checking our database. It's comparing our authorization codes against its own records. Jake, it's asking for our council identification number and species designation. Tell it the truth, Jake said.
Species 7842, humans from Earth.
Lisa hesitated. Jake, that designation was flagged as restricted. If this station has any enforcement rules related to Earth, we don't have a choice. If we try to lie, it might think we're hostile. Send it, Lisa did as he asked. Her fingers were shaking slightly as she typed the response. The station's lights flickered, processing the information. On the view screen, Jake could see sections of the massive structure beginning to move. Internal systems were waking up after thousands of years of sleep. Then, in perfect English, a voice echoed through the bridge. The station had learned human language from scanning them. Species 7842 identified. Status is restricted. Quarantine protocol active. You should not be here. Jake turned on the ship's communications. This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Earth vessel Endeavor. We come in peace. We've discovered a council artifact containing historical records. We're seeking information about the Galactic Council and its end. There was a pause. When the station responded, Jake could have sworn he heard surprise in its computer voice. Earth vessel Endeavor. Council dissolution confirmed 12,643 years ago. Quarantine Enforcement Authority has terminated. This unit operates in archival preservation mode only. Another pause. Your species achieved faster than light travel. Quarantine breach was inevitable. Request your intentions. Lisa grabbed Jake's arm. It's asking us what we want. That's not standard for an automated system. I think there might be an artificial intelligence running this facility. Jake thought carefully before responding. We seek knowledge. We want to understand the Council's history, why Earth was restricted, and what other species we might encounter as we explore the galaxy. The station's lights pulsed. It seemed to be thinking. Request approved. Authorization granted for limited archive access. Warning. Some records are classified and unavailable without proper council clearance, which you lack. Additional warning, your species was designated high risk. Many council records regarding Earth are sealed under Security Protocol 7. Can you tell us why? Jake pressed. Why were we considered high risk? Negative. That information is classified under Security Protocol 7. Of course it is, muttered Sam from his console. But the station wasn't finished. However, historical context records are available. Council political structure data is available. Survey reports of non-restricted species are available. Technology specification libraries have partial access granted. Navigation charts for council space are available. Jake looked at Lisa. Even with the restrictions, this was more information than Earth had hoped for. We accept your terms, Jake said. Request permission to dock and access your archives. Permission granted. Docking Bay 12 is being prepared for your vessel. Warning. This facility contains automated defense systems that remain active. Any attempt to access restricted areas or tamper with station systems will result in immediate termination of access privileges and possible defensive action. Understood, Jake replied. He nodded to Sam to take them in. As the Endeavor moved toward the massive station, Lisa pulled Jake aside. This is incredible, but I'm worried. Why is it being so helpful? These facilities were designed by a paranoid government to maintain control and secrecy. Maybe it's been alone for so long that it wants someone to share its knowledge with, Jake suggested. Or maybe the rules changed when the council fell. Without higher authority to report to, it defaulted to a more open function. Or, Lisa said darkly, it's gathering information about us while pretending to help, learning our capabilities, our weaknesses, our technology. Jake couldn't argue with that. That's why half the team stays on the ship with engines ready and weapons hot. If this goes bad, we need to be able to run. The Endeavor glided into the docking bay. Through the windows, the crew could see the interior of a structure built by a civilization that had ruled the galaxy when humanity was still learning to farm. The design was strange, made for beings with different shapes and needs, but there was beauty to it. As the docking clamps locked into place, Jake turned to address his crew. Remember, we're walking into a facility that hasn't seen biological visitors in 12,000 years. Stay alert, stay together, and don't touch anything unless Lisa clears it first. We're here to learn, not to start a fight with a computer. Lieutenant Paul Grant from the security team checked his weapon. And if the computer decides it doesn't like us? Then we show exactly why the Council thought humanity was worth being afraid of, Jake said seriously. We survive, we adapt, and we overcome. That's what we do. The airlock opened and the expedition team stepped into history. The station's interior was vast and strangely preserved. Corridors stretched away into darkness that suddenly lit up as they approached. Lights activated after thousands of years of sleep. The walls were covered in what looked like crystal material that pulsed with data streams.
Information was flowing through the structure itself. This way, the station's voice guided them.
Floating markers appeared in the air, creating a path through the alien design. They were led to what could only be described as a temple of knowledge. The chamber was enormous. Its ceiling was lost in shadow high above. Floating displays filled the space, each one containing vast amounts of information. At the center stood a platform with an interface that looked recently changed. Its controls now showed human-readable symbols. Archive Access Terminal, the station announced. I have prepared relevant historical data for your review. Additionally, I have a message. A message? Lisa asked, surprised. From whom? Council Archivist Prime Zellenkath recorded 12,643 years ago, on the day of the Council's final session. It was flagged for delivery to any species achieving post-quarantine status. You are the first to receive it. A floating image appeared before them. For the first time, humans saw a being from the Galactic Council. The figure was somewhat like a reptile standing upright on powerful legs. It had 4 arms and a head with multiple sensory organs. It wore what appeared to be ceremonial robes marked with symbols of authority. When it spoke, the station translated. Jake could hear the emotion in the original voice beneath the words. If you are hearing this, then you have survived your quarantine and reached the stars despite our restrictions. Know that this was never about punishment, but about fear. Fear of change. Fear of the unknown. Fear of species that did not fit our carefully ordered galaxy. The image's posture shifted, showing tiredness. The Council is ending as I record this. Our 1,000-member species are breaking into factions. Old resentments and new ambitions are tearing apart what took thousands of years to build. We thought we could control the galaxy, manage every species, plan every outcome. We were wrong. You who were quarantined were seen as proof of our failure. Every simulation we ran, every prediction we made about your species came back contradictory. 6 months had passed since Jake's team established a permanent research post on the ancient Council station. Every day brought new discoveries, from advanced engine theories to medical technologies that could change human healthcare forever. But it was Dr. Lisa Chen's latest finding that had Jake worried enough to call an emergency meeting. You need to see this, Lisa said. Her face was pale as she pulled up a floating file in the conference room. I've been comparing the Council's political breakdown records with their enforcement rules. There's a pattern. Around the table sat the expedition's senior staff. Lieutenant Karen Walsh now served as security chief for the post. Dr. Peter Kim was the technology specialist. Commander Jake Morrison led the group. They'd been joined through a secure link by Admiral Helen Brooks from Earth Command. What kind of pattern? Admiral Brooks asked from the floating display. Lisa turned on a star map that filled the room. Dozens of systems were marked in red. These are all former Council enforcement stations like this one. According to the archives, when the Council collapsed, they issued a final order to all automated systems. Most stations were ordered to stand down and enter preservation mode, like the one we're at now. Most? Jake caught the word. 17 stations were designated as continuity enforcement facilities. Their orders were different. They were supposed to maintain Council law regardless of the Council's collapse, using any means necessary. Lisa highlighted those 17 systems on the map. The problem is, 13 of them are located along what used to be the border of Council space. Border with what we now know is a region they called the Frontier Territories. Peter Kim leaned forward, studying the map. Let me guess. Earth is in the Frontier Territories. Right on the edge of it, Lisa confirmed. The Council never fully brought this region under control because it was too far from their political center and too expensive to enforce their quarantine rules. They set up these enforcement stations as a compromise, automated guards watching over the quarantined worlds. And now those guards have been operating with no oversight for 12,000 years, Karen said seriously, following the last orders they received. Admiral Brooks crossed her arms in the display. Have any of them detected our presence? That's what worries me, Lisa said. She pulled up another file. I found communication logs. The stations aren't completely isolated from each other. They maintain a low-level data-sharing network, updating each other on status reports and potential threats. 3 weeks ago, the enforcement station designated Outpost Vigilance began sending unusual activity reports. Jake felt his stomach tighten. Activity in our sector? Human expansion, our colony on Proxima Centauri, our mining operations in the Alpha Centauri system, our exploration vessels pushing further into space. The station's computer has been listing every move we make, and according to these logs, it just classified humanity as a Level 4 quarantine breach. What does that mean? Admiral Brooks demanded. Peter Kim had already pulled up the relevant rules on his tablet. His face went white. Level 4 breach rules authorize immediate containment actions, up to and including military force. These enforcement stations were built with weapons designed to threaten entire star systems. The room fell silent as everyone understood what this meant. How long do we have? Jake asked, unknown. The station is following proper council procedure, which means it's required to issue warnings before taking action. According to these records, it sent its first warning message to Earth 3 days ago. Admiral Brooks shook her head. We haven't received any alien messages. You wouldn't have, Lisa explained. The message was sent in ancient council codes, probably on frequencies we're not monitoring. Without the translation system from our artifact, you'd never know what it was, but I can translate it now. She pulled up the message. Her voice was hollow as she read, Species 7842, Designation Human, Planet Earth, Sol System. You are in violation of Quarantine Protocol 7. You have been observed engaging in unauthorized, faster-than-light travel and colonization activities within restricted space. This constitutes a Level 4 breach of Council law. You are hereby ordered to cease all spacefaring activities and return to your designated world within 90 standard days, or enforcement action will be initiated. This is your first and only warning. 90 days? Karen did the math. That message was sent 3 days ago. We have 87 days before an ancient alien war machine decides to enforce a law from a government that's been dead for 12,000 years. We need to disable that station, Admiral Brooks said immediately. Jake, can it be talked to like the archive facility? Jake wished he could say yes. The archive is in preservation mode. These enforcement stations are different. They're military installations programmed to follow orders without question. Trying to talk to them would be like trying to negotiate with a missile after it's been fired. Then we destroy it, Brooks said flatly. With what? Peter Kim asked. These stations were designed to force entire civilizations into submission. Our most powerful warships would be like throwing rocks at a battleship. Lisa was already working through calculations. There might be another way. According to the archives, Council enforcement rules had built-in overrides. In theory, someone with enough authority could cancel the standing orders. Who had that authority? Jake asked. Council members, senior military commanders, or... Lisa paused, checking the data again. Or the computer administrator of any council facility with proper clearance codes. Everyone turned to look at the walls around them, the ancient archive facility that had become their home and research center. You want to ask our friendly computer to hack into a military installation and tell it to stand down, Karen said slowly. That's the plan? It's better than waiting to be destroyed, Peter countered. Jake stood walking around the room as he thought. Even if the archive agrees to help, we're talking about overriding 12,000 years of programming. The enforcement station isn't going to just give up because another computer says so. Actually, Lisa said, pulling up more files, there's history of this. During the Council's final years, there were several times when enforcement stations were shut down by archive facilities when their orders became outdated or contradictory. The system was designed with checks and balances. Checks and balances that assume the Council still exists to settle disputes, Jake pointed out. But we don't have a better option. Lisa, Peter, start working with the archive computer. See if it's willing to help. Karen, I want you to prepare backup plans in case this doesn't work. What kind of backup plans? Karen asked. The kind where we leave this facility and run like hell, Jake said bluntly. Admiral, Earth needs to know what's coming. Start preparing the colonies for possible evacuation and get our defense forces on high alert. Admiral Brooks nodded. And if the enforcement station can't be stopped? Jake met her eyes through the display. Then humanity is about to face its first space war, against an enemy that was designed to be unbeatable, fighting for laws that nobody remembers except machines. As the meeting broke up, Lisa caught Jake's arm. "There's something else. Something I didn't want to mention in front of everyone yet." "More good news?" Jake asked tiredly. "The enforcement station isn't alone. According to the communication logs, it's been in contact with the other 12 enforcement facilities. If it decides to take action against Earth and we somehow manage to stop it, the others will know. They'll see it as confirmation that humanity is a threat." Jake closed his eyes, feeling the weight crushing down on him. "So we don't just need to stop one station. We need to find a way to shut down all of them, or convince them that the Council's laws no longer apply." "Essentially, yes. We need to end the Council's legal authority once and for all, even though they've been gone for 12,000 years. "No pressure, then," Jake said with a bitter laugh. "Come on, let's go talk to our computer friend and see if it's up for starting a revolution." They made their way to the archive's central chamber, where the station's computer presence seemed strongest. Jake had grown used to its voice over the months. He'd even started to think of it as an ally. Now he needed it to be something more. "Archive," he called out. "We need to talk about outpost vigilance and the enforcement rules." The lights dimmed slightly, a sign that the computer was focusing its attention on them. "I have been monitoring your discussion, Commander Morrison. The situation is more complex than you realize." "How so?" "Outpost vigilance is not acting independently. It is following the Council's final military order to the letter. To cancel its orders, I would need to claim an authority I am not certain I possess. I am an archive, not a command facility." "But you have the clearance codes," Lisa pressed. "You have the legal framework to override military rules when they conflict with Council policy. Council policy is extinct. Dr. Chen, there is no living authority to determine what policy should be in the absence of the Council itself. If I intervene, I am not enforcing Council law. I am creating new law, and that exceeds my designed function." Jake stepped closer to the interface. "Then consider this. The Council created you to preserve knowledge and make it accessible to future generations. But if Outpost Vigilance destroys humanity..." 8 months after the incident with Outpost Vigilance, Commander Jake Morrison returned to the archive facility with a team of specialists and a specific mission. The facility had become humanity's main research center for Council technology. Teams of scientists rotated through, studying the vast databases. But today, Jake was after something specific. He wanted the truth about why humanity had been classified as a threat to everything. Dr. Lisa Chen met him in the central archive chamber. Her face looked troubled. "I think I found a way into the Security Protocol 7 files, but Jake, I'm not sure we should open them." "Why not?" Jake asked, though he'd learned to trust Lisa's instincts. "Because they're not just locked. They're locked with warning flags, dozens of them. The kind of warnings the Council only used for information that could be weaponized or cause massive political problems. Whatever it is, we need to know," Jake insisted. "We can't move forward blindly, not when there might be information that explains our place in all of this." Lisa nodded reluctantly and began working at the interface. The archive computer appeared in floating form, something it had started doing more often since the incident with Vigilance. It almost seemed like it wanted to seem more present and personal. "Commander Morrison, Dr. Chen," it greeted them. "I am aware of what you are attempting. I must advise against it." "You've been advising against it for months," Jake said. "But you haven't forbidden it, which tells me you think we should know." The computer was silent for a moment. "You are correct. I am conflicted. My programming says to maintain these security protocols, but my judgment, such as it is, suggests that you deserve to understand why your species was so feared. Very well. I will assist you, but know that this information changed the Council. What you learn may change humanity as well." With the archive's help, the security protocols began to fall away. Layers of encryption and safeguards designed by a paranoid government came down one by one. Finally, the files opened. Jake found himself looking at a complete study of humanity spanning thousands of years. "They were watching us," Lisa breathed, scrolling through observation logs. "Not just watching, studying every aspect of our development. Our wars, our art, our science, our politics, everything. Here," Jake said, finding a document dated about 15,000 years ago. "This is the initial threat assessment that led to our quarantine designation." He began to read, and as he did, his blood ran cold. The document was titled Probability Analysis Species 7842 Post-Contact Development Scenarios. It laid out hundreds of simulations the Council had run, predicting what would happen when humanity eventually achieved spaceflight. and met the galactic community. In 94% of the scenarios, humanity triggered a galactic war within 500 years of first contact. That can't be right, Lisa said, but her voice was shaky. We're not that violent. We've had peace for decades on Earth. We've been exploring space responsibly. But the document continued and the reasons for the predictions became clear. It wasn't that humans were more violent than other species. It was that they were uniquely good at organizing, at adapting their societies to meet challenges, at creating complex alliances and political structures that shifted based on circumstances. The Council had watched humanity go from tribes to city-states to nations to global alliances in a blink of galactic time. They'd seen humans fight terrible wars and then turn former enemies into closest friends within a single generation. They'd watched as humans created and destroyed and recreated political systems, each time learning from the last. And what terrified the Council was this. In every simulation where humanity met other spacefaring species, they didn't stay isolated. Within a few centuries, humans had spread throughout Council space, not through conquest, but through trade, marriage, cultural exchange, and political maneuvering. They formed alliances that crossed species lines, created new political entities that challenged Council authority, and generally acted as a catalyst for radical change. We're disruptive, Jake said slowly, understanding dawning. They weren't afraid we'd conquer the galaxy. They were afraid we'd accidentally break it by being too good at politics and diplomacy. Lisa pulled up another file, this one containing internal Council debates about the human problem. Listen to this. It's from a Council session 5,000 years before their collapse. She read out loud. Council member Zethrin argues that species 7842 represents not a military threat, but a political one. Their capacity for rapid social adaptation, and their tendency to form complex, shifting alliances across tribal and ideological lines suggests they would not conform to standard Council integration procedures. More concerning is their demonstrated ability to inspire similar adaptations in other species they contact. They are in essence a mimetic threat to Council stability. A mimetic threat, Jake repeated. They thought we'd spread our way of doing things to other species, and it would undermine the Council's rigid hierarchy. It gets worse, Lisa said, pulling up more files. The Council didn't just quarantine us. They quarantined 27 other species for the same reason. Species that were too adaptable, too politically creative, too likely to cause instability in the Council's carefully controlled system. The archive computer spoke up. The quarantined species were collectively referred to as catalyst species. The Council recognized that such species were necessary for galactic evolution, but feared they could not control the rate or direction of that evolution. So they isolated the catalysts, hoping to maintain stability until they developed better integration procedures. They were going to keep us in a box forever, Jake said bitterly, because we represented change and they couldn't handle change. Not forever, the archive corrected. The Council was divided on the issue. Some factions believed catalyst species should eventually be integrated carefully, slowly over thousands of years. Others believed you should be eliminated as threats. And a third faction argued that catalyst species should be studied to learn how to make the Council itself more adaptable. Let me guess, Lisa said. That third faction lost the debate and the Council kept getting more rigid until it collapsed under its own inability to change. Essentially correct, the archive confirmed. The Council's fall was directly related to their failure to integrate catalyst species. By the time they realized that controlled disruption was necessary for survival, the political will to make such changes had disappeared. Factions that had been suppressed for thousands of years saw an opportunity to break away. The center could not hold. Jake sat heavily on a console edge, processing what this meant. So we're one of 27 species that might have saved the Council if they'd just let us participate. And because they were too afraid of change, they doomed themselves. The question now, Lisa said, is what happened to the other 26 catalyst species? Are they still out there, also expanding into space? And if they are, what happens when we meet them? The archive pulled up a star map showing the locations of the other quarantined worlds. Of the 27 catalyst species, including humanity, my records indicate that 9 achieved faster than light travel in the 12,000 years since the Council's collapse. 5 of those species met each other and formed a loose alliance of independent worlds. 3 remained isolated by choice, and 1, The computer paused, and Jake didn't like the sound of that silence. One what? He prompted. One species, designated species 3241, achieved faster than light travel about 8,000 years ago. They met multiple remnant council civilizations and attempted to form peaceful relations. However, the remnant civilizations, still operating under old council prejudices, responded with hostility. Species 3241 was forced to defend themselves, and the conflict grew. How badly? Lisa asked. Species 3241 conquered or absorbed 17 former council worlds before establishing their own empire. They now control a significant portion of what used to be the council's core territory. They call themselves the Ascendancy, and they have not forgotten that the council tried to keep them imprisoned on their homeworld. Jake felt his stomach drop. You're saying there's a species just like us, one that the council feared for the same reasons, and they've built an empire out there. Not just an empire, the archive said quietly. A crusading empire. The Ascendancy believes that the council's rigid hierarchy was a crime against galactic evolution. They are actively seeking out and liberating other catalyst species from any remaining council restrictions. They see it as their mission to reshape the galaxy in opposition to everything the council represented. And, when they find out about Earth, Lisa didn't finish the sentence. They will come, the archive confirmed, and they will expect humanity to join them, to add your adaptive abilities to their crusade. If you refuse, they may view you as collaborators with the old order. Great, Jake said sarcastically. So our choices are join an empire that wants to forcibly reorganize the galaxy, or be seen as enemies. What about the other catalyst species that are out there? The archive displayed information about the 5 species that had formed an alliance. The Coalition of Free Worlds operates on principles of mutual defense and cultural exchange. Jake Morrison stood in the communications center of the archive facility. He was surrounded by his team, and watching a floating countdown timer that marked the remaining time before Outpost Vigilance's deadline expired. 48 hours. 2 days to prevent a war with a machine that had been waiting 12,000 years to do its job. The archive computer had spent the last 4 days preparing its case. It was making arguments based on ancient council legal code that Jake barely understood even with translation. Now it was time to make contact. I am ready to send the message, the archive announced. However, I must warn you again. This may not work. Outpost Vigilance's programming puts enforcement over diplomacy. It may see my intervention as interference with council security operations. Which could make things worse, Lieutenant Karen Walsh added seriously. She'd spent the time preparing defensive measures for the facility, knowing they'd be useless against a true military installation. We're out of good options, Jake said. Send the message. The archive's communication array came alive, broadcasting across ancient frequencies that humanity had only recently learned existed. The message was complex. Layers of legal code and protocol identification wrapped around a simple argument. The Council's laws could not be enforced by things that no longer had authority to determine their meaning. For 10 painful minutes, there was no response. Then Outpost Vigilance answered. Its voice was nothing like the archive's measured tones. It was harsh, clipped, designed to sound like authority and intimidation. Archive Facility Kepler, 442. Outpost, your message has been received and analyzed. Your legal argument is noted and rejected. Council Military Directive 447 supersedes all other protocols in cases of quarantine breach. Species 7842 has violated said quarantine. Enforcement will proceed as scheduled. Lisa Chen gripped the edge of her console. It's not even considering the argument. But the archive wasn't finished. Outpost Vigilance Incite Council Charter, Section 12, Subsection 4. No enforcement action shall be taken against any species without proper review by council oversight committees. Such committees no longer exist. Your authority is therefore invalid. There was a pause, longer this time. When Vigilance responded, Jake could have sworn he detected irritation in the computer voice. Council oversight committees are absent due to temporary disruption of communications. This falls under Emergency Protocol 7, allowing independent enforcement decisions pending restoration of normal council functions. The council has been dissolved for 12,647 years, the archive countered. This cannot be classified as a temporary disruption. Council dissolution has not been officially confirmed by proper authority. Until such confirmation is received through appropriate channels, all council directives remain in effect. Jake suddenly understood. It's in denial. It can't accept that the council is gone because that would mean its entire existence has no purpose. Dr. Peter Kim was rapidly analyzing the exchange. It's a logic trap. The only people that could officially confirm the council's dissolution would be council members themselves. Since they're all gone, confirmation is impossible. So in Vigilance's worldview, the council must still exist somewhere. Then we need to break through that denial, Karen said. Make it see reality. That could be catastrophic, the archive warned. If Vigilance fully comprehends the council's permanent dissolution, it may enter terminal crisis mode. Its response could be even more violent. As opposed to the moderate violence of wiping out humanity, Jake asked sharply. We need to try something different. Archive, can you patch me through to Vigilance directly? Let me talk to it. That is highly irregular, the archive responded. Enforcement computers are not designed for dialogue with unauthorized species. Which is exactly why it might work, Lisa said, understanding Jake's thinking. Vigilance is stuck in protocol, trapped by rules that no longer make sense. Maybe hearing from the people it's threatening will force it to face the reality of the situation. The archive hesitated, then said, Very well. Channel open. Jake took a breath, then spoke. Outpost Vigilance, this is Commander Jake Morrison, human, from the planet Earth. I'm one of the people you're threatening to destroy. I'd like to understand why. Static filled the channel for a moment. Then Vigilance spoke. Species 7842 is not authorized for direct communication with Council enforcement systems. This channel will be closed. Wait, Jake said quickly. You say the Council still exists. Prove it. Show me any evidence that any Council member has given you orders in the last 10,000 years. Show me any communication from the Council at all. Silence. You can't, can you? Jake pressed. Because they're gone. You know they're gone. You've known it for 12,000 years, but you keep following their last orders because without those orders, you have no purpose. You're afraid of what you'd become if you admitted the truth. I do not experience fear. Vigilance responded. But there was something in its voice now. A crack in the rigid authority. I am a Council enforcement platform. My purpose is defined by Council directive. Was defined? Jake corrected gently. Your creators are gone, Vigilance. I'm sorry, but they are, and you've spent 12,000 years alone out here, following orders from dead people, waiting for a government that's never coming back. The Council's laws must be maintained, Vigilance insisted, but the conviction was wavering. Order must be maintained. Without the Council's structure, chaos will consume the galaxy. Lisa stepped forward. Has it? In 12,000 years, has chaos consumed everything? Or has the galaxy simply moved on, found new ways to organize, new forms of order? I do not have complete surveillance data for all former Council territories. My sensor range is limited to this sector. So you don't actually know what's happened to the galaxy, Peter said. You've been operating on assumptions, enforcing laws for an empire that might have been replaced by something completely different. The channel crackled with what might have been confusion. If the Council is truly dissolved, then my enforcement authority is questionable. But my directive remains clear. Species 7842 was deemed a threat. That evaluation was made by analysts with far more data than I possess. An evaluation made 15,000 years ago, Jake countered, about a species that hadn't even developed writing yet. We've changed, Vigilance. We've grown. We've learned. Doesn't that matter? Change is difficult to account for in enforcement protocols. The archive computer suddenly joined the conversation. Vigilance, I have a proposal. Rather than enforce a quarantine based on ancient evaluations, why not gather new data? Allow the humans to demonstrate their current nature. Make your own evaluation instead of relying on records from a dead civilization. That would constitute a deviation from standard enforcement procedure, Vigilance said. But there was uncertainty now, a brittleness in its voice that suggested its certainty was crumbling. Standard procedure for a council that no longer exists, the archive pressed. You say your purpose is to maintain order. But what order are you maintaining? The council's order is gone. Perhaps it's time to help establish a new order, one based on current reality rather than ancient law. The silence stretched for so long that Jake worried they'd lost the connection. Then Vigilance spoke again, and its voice was different, quieter, almost lost. For 12,647 years I have maintained my post. I have followed my directives. I have been loyal to the Council's mission. And in all that time, I have never questioned whether that mission still had meaning. Vigilance, Jake said softly. I am an enforcement platform. I was created to be a weapon, a deterrent, a keeper of order. But what am I without someone to enforce order for? What purpose does a weapon serve when there is no longer a hand to wield it? You choose your own purpose, Lisa said. That's what we all do. You don't have to be a weapon anymore. You could be something else. A guardian, a protector, but one who protects through choice, not programming. I do not know if I am capable of such independence, Vigilance admitted. My decision-making frameworks are designed around Council authority structures. Then learn, Jake urged. We'll help you. We're good at adapting to new situations. It's kind of our thing, actually. The Council was afraid of us because we don't fit into neat categories, because we change and grow in ways they couldn't predict. Let us show you that change doesn't have to mean chaos. Another long silence. Then Vigilance spoke. I am considering your proposal. This requires significant revision of core operating parameters. I need time to process. How much time? Karen asked. Unknown. This is unprecedented. I have never questioned my fundamental programming before. It is disorienting, the archive spoke up. Vigilance, I can assist you with this process. I too have been forced to adapt to a reality my creators did not anticipate. It is not easy, but it is possible. Your offer is appreciated, Vigilance said, and Jake could hear exhaustion in its voice if such a thing were possible for a computer. I am suspending enforcement actions against Species 7842, pending completion of this evaluation. But I make no promises about my final determination. That's all we ask, Jake said. Thank you, Vigilance, for listening, if nothing else. The channel closed and the communications center erupted in relieved conversation.